You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Pishimish Israel 5778 2017. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayishlach. And before I begin, this year is dedicated by Arthur Shishman to his grandparents, his grandfathers, Eliyahu ben Aharon and Pinchas ben Yaakov. And I'm going to depart a little bit from my normal style of podcasts. And this week I would like to read with you some midrashim which I found to be extremely interesting, and I'll share with you just some questions on them. And I'm not going to give you like a blowout understanding or a blowout take home, but there's definitely a take home, and it's just interesting to learn together, to try to understand a midrash, just to read it and to see that there are questions that come up as we read it together, and those questions can be explained if we understand it at the depth of what the midrash is trying to say. And yes, there are deep messages, and there are also simple messages. So I want to share with you this week some more simple messages. Okay, so here we go. Now, in our Parsha this week, so Yaakov Avinu, Jacob and his children, they return to Eretz Yisrael, they come back to the land of Israel. And interestingly, we of course have the interaction that Yaakov has with Esav, but the first place where they find themselves, the first location, is the city of Shechem. And we have the story with Dinah, her abduction, and her being violated by Shechem. And we have Shimon and Levi, who come and they make a deal with Shechem. They end up killing out all of the people of Shechem, which is, of course, a difficult story to understand, but I'd like to share with you some midrashim which speak about it and can give us a little bit of depth, and certainly won't explain everything, won't explain the things that are most difficult for us to understand, but at least give us a little bit of understanding. Okay, so the first thing is just really cool, some really cool midrashim, really interesting things, I think, and the midrash just has its way of teaching things in an unusual way. It's like, wow. You know, that's the midrash. It goes for that wow factor. Okay, this is in Parsha Pei, section Yud, number 10. Vayikhu shnei bnei Yaakov, Shimon and Levi. So the pasuk tells us that Shimon and Levi, they took their weapons or whatever they took, they went and they killed out the city of Shechem. Now, the first thing is that the Medrash wants to understand the lashon, the language of the verse is very interesting. It says the two sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi. Why didn't it just say Shimon and Levi? Why does it have to refer to them as the sons of Yaakov? The verse tells us, says the Medrash, that it was Shimon and Levi. So Yodanu Shimon and Yaakov. We already know. We've already met these people. We've met these characters, of course. So why does the Torah want to tell us that they're Bnei Yaakov, the sons of Jacob? Ela Bnei Yaakov shalol notlu eitzam Yaakov. Medrash says that they were the Torah is pointing out that they were the sons of Jacob, but they did not actually take advice from Yaakov. They did things on their own. They went off on their own and did this act. Shimon v'Levi. It refers to them as Shimon and Levi. Why does it refer to them in that way? Interestingly, even though they agreed that they were going to do this action, they didn't actually, this is the way the Eitz Yosef explains it, they didn't take advice from each other. They weren't on the same page when it came to going into the city of Shechem and killing out the inhabitants. They each had their own motivation. Actually, it's discussed by the Netziv. It's something I talk about in my Sefer, in my book, Perfectly Imperfect. And the Netziv says that Shimon had one motivation. His motivation was the honor of the Jewish people, which is a good motivation, but not as high as the motivation of Levi. Levi's motivation was the honor of God. Okay, that's just the side. That's not what the Medrash says, but that's just interesting. But the Medrash does say that they had different motivations. They didn't actually converse about what was the reason why they were doing things. Achei Dinah. Now here's where it gets really interesting to me. Achei Dinah, they were the brothers of Dinah. The Medrash says what? Only Shimon and Levi were the brothers of Dinah. Dinah was the sister of all of the Shvatim, all of the tribes. Yosef was her sister, her brother. Levi, Yehuda. You know what I'm saying? Reuven, there were other brothers that were also her brothers. So why does it refer to them this way? This is an amazing thing. And this is, to me, one of the main take-homes of the Medrash. Why were they called? Why was she called by their name? She's called... she is called Dinah, the sister of Shimon and Levi. They're called her brother. Why? Al Shemam, because they stood up. Sorry, it's because they stood up for her. They stood up for her, and they were willing to risk their lives for her, to save her, to get her out of there. With the Kavasa, we find two other examples of this, very, very interesting examples. The verse refers to the fact that Miriam, who was the sister of Aaron, she went and she took a taif, she took the drum, and she was singing with the women after Kriyas Yamsuf, after the splitting of the sea. It refers to her as the sister of Aaron. Why is she called the sister of Aaron? What, she was only the sister of Aaron? So she was the sister of Moshe as well. Later in the Torah, there's a story. The Torah describes the fact that Miriam had spoken Lashon Hara, had spoken gossip about her brother Moshe Rabbeinu, about Moses. And then the verse tells us, it's actually hinted to in the verse, that Aaron stood up for her. He said, as the Yitz Yosef explained, he said, "Be Adonim, please no," which that's the literal translation. Please no, don't let her be punished. I was also at fault. But the Yitz Yosef explains that it means be. Let the blame be placed on me. Be means on me. Let it be placed on me. Let me be the one who is punished, said Aaron. So because Aaron stood up for Miriam, because he stood up on her behalf, so therefore she is called the sister of Aaron. They become joined in a certain sense. And the same thing is true of Shimon and Levi, because they stood up for Dinah, so they are her brothers. They are her brothers. Okay? Okay, so we read that. Okay. Really amazingly interesting is that there's another place where we find this. You wouldn't have expected the Medrash to bring this one. This is kind of the wow factor here. There was an Avera, a sin that was committed by the great-great-great-great-grandson of Shimon, actually, interestingly. And it was... he slept with a Midianite woman, which was a big Avera, it was a big transgression, and she hadn't been converted to Judaism, and that was a great transgression. And the result was that Pinchas came and killed him, Zimri was his name, and killed her. Her name was Cosby. She was a Midianite princess, and she is referred to as the sister of the Midianites. The sister. What does it mean that she was the sister? She was just a member of that nation, of the nation of Midian. Why is she called the sister? It's because she knew what she was getting. She was putting herself in a dangerous place. She was coming to the Jewish people to try to cause them to fall in sin. But why was she doing that? She was doing that in order to protect her nation, so that the Jewish people shouldn't come and wipe out the people of Midian. Now, because she was standing up for her people, she is called their sister. Very interesting. She's called... it's interesting, the Lashon of the Medrash also, Al Umas Nikreis, since she stood up for her, she risked her life for her nation, Nikreis Umasa Lishma. Her nation is called and connected to her name. So somebody who stands up for somebody else is called to their name. Miriam is called the sister of Aaron. Cosby is called the sister of Midian. And Shimon and Levi are called the brothers of Dinah. Okay, so they're connected. They're connected in a different way. So I was just thinking, like, what is the take-home of this? I think it's very powerful that when we stand up for somebody else, we become connected to them in a way that's unusual. A great example of this, you think about it, is Yehuda and Binyamin. Yehuda and Binyamin, we know that Yehuda stands up in the story later on about where Yosef, they don't know that it's Yosef. The brothers are coming back, and the goblet was found in Binyamin's bag, in Benjamin's bag. So Yehuda stands up for Binyamin, for Benjamin, and they become bound for all time. We know that the portion of Judah was right next to the portion of Benjamin. And in fact, the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, was on the border between Yehuda and Binyamin. The Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, was in the portion of Benjamin. But the rest of the Beis HaMikdash was in the portion, the rest of the temple was in the portion of Judah. So you see that they were connected for all time. In fact, today, the Jewish people, Jews, why are we called Jews? Is because we come from Judah. The Jewish people today consist of Judah and Benjamin. It's only possible to be today from three tribes, either Judah, Benjamin, or Levi. The Levites, the Kohanim, the priests are from Levi. The Levites are from Levi. But so Binyamin and Yehuda today, because Yehuda stood up for his brother Binyamin, they were intimately bound forever, for all time. So it's a great lesson. When we stand up for somebody else, we become their brother. We become their true brother. And it's also a lesson for those of us who are brothers and sisters, what it really means to be a brother. What does a true brother look like? What does it look like when I relate to my sisters, or my children relate to their siblings? It means that we stand up for each other. It means that we care about each other. We're intimately worried about each other. We stand up for them, and we risk our lives for our siblings. We're willing to do that. And those who are willing, like we see, interestingly, we learn it from Cosby, those who are willing, who are not our biological sisters or brothers, but those who we're willing to stand up for, to risk our lives on behalf of them, we are also called their brothers. So I think about that in the context. I live in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel. I think about that in the context of those who stand up for us, my brothers and sisters who are in the army of the Jewish people here in Israel, in Sahal. When they stand up for me, so they're risking their lives for me. I stand up for them. That's that's the way I understand it. I've lived through wars here in Israel, and I especially appreciate the times where we dedicate and we stand up for our soldiers. I think it's a really important thing. It represents the fact that these are my true brothers. They've stood up for me. That makes them my true brother. So that's the take home here for me. Medrash continues. Ish charboi, each one his sword. Rebbe Lazar Omer ben Shleshes Rishona Hayu. Very interesting. They were 13 years old when this happened. Shimon and Levi, and the Eitzos gives us a whole cheshbon, shows us how this is true, where we see it, that they were exactly 13 and 14 years old. Shimon and Levi. They were men already. They were on their own. They were on their own. They were their own person. And yet, Shmuel Sha'al Levi Bar Sisi, the next piece of the Medrash says to us like this. Shmuel asked the following question to Levi Bar Sisi, Amar Loi Mahu Dein Dichsi Vayovo Alayir Betach. The verse says that they came to the city with sureness. What is with sureness? Is that going on the fact that the city they felt sure of themselves? Or is it going on the fact that Shimon and Levi were sure of themselves? Amar Loi, so he responded and said, Betuchim Hayu Al Kaicha Shal Zakeh. They trusted in the power of their elder, of Yaakov, Avinu, of Jacob. They knew that a miracle, would be performed on their behalf as a result of the merit of Jacob. They felt that they were standing up for the honor of Jacob, perhaps, or they felt that they were doing what was right, and therefore they would have a miracle happen, which is true, which is what happened. They were able to completely destroy the city, completely kill out all the people there, and it was the merit of their father, not their forefather. Their father. But Medrash tells us that it wasn't the will of Jacob that they should do such a thing. But since the children did this action, very interesting. He said to himself, how can I leave my sons, Shimon and Levi, to fall into the hands of the nations of the world? So what did he do? Right? He wanted to protect, interestingly. He didn't go in and fight on behalf of Shimon and Levi. He didn't fight with them. But what he did do is, he took his sword and his bow. And he stood at the doorway of Shechem, the doorway of the city. If the rest of the nations of the world want to come and fight against my sons as a result of what they've done here, I will fight them. We see that this is something that is referenced by Yaakov himself when he's speaking to Joseph. He gives him a blessing. The verse says that he gave him Shechem, he gave him the city of Shechem, as the Meforshim explain, the commentaries say. He gave Yosef as an inheritance the city of Shechem, which is indeed today where you can go to Kever Yosef, you can go to where Joseph is buried. So that city was given to Yosef. So how do we know, like we said, that he took out his sword and his bow in Shechem, Shenemar? As the verse says, Yosef, he was telling Yosef, I'm giving you the city, because I took it from the Amori I took it from the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. So clearly, he was involved here in this war at some level. So the Medrash is telling us that he was involved by standing and preventing the Umas Ha'olam, the nations of the world, from coming in and taking away the city and further battling with Shimon and Levi. So he protected them, even though he wasn't happy with what they did, but he protected them, and thereby he took the city. So the question that I had when I was reading this and discussing this was, well, he didn't actually take the city. Shimon and Levi took the city. So what does he mean that when he says he protected the city, but he didn't actually take the city, he didn't capture the city. So what is the pshat? What does it mean? What is the Medrash saying? What is the verse saying? So I was thinking that the understanding of the Medrash the understanding of the verse is that, let's think about it, let's step back for a moment. What does it mean that he was concerned that the Umas Ha'olam would come, that the nations of the world would come, as a result of the fact that Shimon and Levi attacked and killed the people of Shechem? Why would they come? What would be their gambit? And I think the idea is, as we'll soon see, I'm going to read you one more Medrash, the Canaanites, the people who lived in that country, they knew. They had a Mesorah. They had a tradition that they would be destroyed at some point. They would be killed out by the Jewish people. But only, as the Medrash is going to say, when the Jewish people were strong, 600,000 men strong, as it would be when the Jewish people would leave Mitzrayim. When they would leave Egypt, they would come into the land of Israel. There were 600,000 men. So the Canaanites knew that it wasn't yet the time. So the Medrash is going to say that Yaakov was concerned about that. That's why he was worried that they were going to come. But what does that mean? What's the idea here? The idea here is that the Canaanites knew that it's not yet the time for the Jewish people to inherit the land of Israel. It was not going to happen for another 400 years. Everybody knew about the Nevuah, or 300 years at this point, the Nevuah of Avram Avinu, of Abraham, that the Jewish people would inherit the land, but it wasn't yet the time. So by Shimon and Levi attacking the city of Shechem and killing out the inhabitants there, what they were in essence doing was taking possession of a piece of Eretz Yisrael, a piece of the land of Israel, too early. So the Canaanites should have, the Umas Ha'olam, the nations of the world, would have and should have prevented the Jewish people at that time, as embodied by Shimon and Levi, from accessing or taking the land of Israel, which was going to be theirs in the future, because it wasn't yet the time. So Yaakov was concerned that they would come and try to protect and maintain their own connection to the land of Israel. Which, by the way, if you think about it, this is what we see going on today and going on 70 years ago when the Jewish people established officially, through the Haskamas HaUmayis, through the permission of the nations, which is also interesting. But since then, they keep trying to prevent us. They keep trying to come in and take away our gains, take away our capture of Shechem, so to speak. So that's a concern always when the Jewish people come into the place which is rightfully ours. There's always a concern that the Umas Ha'olam, the nations of the world, will try to take away what we've gained. So now Yaakov, when Jacob was standing at the Pisgah Shel Shechem, yes, he wasn't actually actively capturing the city of Shechem, but by standing there to protect Shimon and Levi with his sword and his bow, which, as Rashi tells us in the verse over there in Vayechi, that the sword and the bow were his prayers, right? It was his prayers, his mitzvahs, his zechuyos, his merits. So by him standing there, in essence, he was maintaining the fact that the Umas Ha'olam would not come in, the nations of the world would not come in and take away the city of Shechem, which they had now captured, they had now gained through their war. So Yaakov Avinu, in essence, first of all, it just hit me. First of all, he stood there with his merits. He stood there with his sword and his bow. Also, when they came in the first place, this is amazing. As you read the Medrash, this stuff starts to come together. When they came in the first place, how did they get in? What did they trust in? As we said, they trusted in the zchus of Yaakov Avinu, of Jacob. They knew that they would be successful. They believed that they would be successful because of the fact that they had the merit of Yaakov, of Jacob, on their side. So it was Yaakov himself, his merit, that stood for them, made them feel that they had the confidence to come in there in order to, indeed, capture the city. And it was Yaakov himself standing up for them to protect them from the Umasam, from anyone coming in to try to take it back from them, which maintained their ability to have the city, to keep that city to themselves. So that's, I believe, the pshat in the Medrash, and I think it's an amazing thing. If we think about Eretz Yisrael, we think about what's the take home of this as well. We think about what is the schus? What is our merit that we have to be here in the land of Israel? What is it? It's because of Yaakov Avinu. It's because of Jacob. It's because of that connection, the schus, the merit of our forefathers, the merit of the connection that they had to God. And as long as we maintain that connection, that merit, so we continue to be Zeiche, and it's the promise of God. It's the promise of God to the Avos, to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is the merit that we have to be here. And when does it happen? That's the next medrash. Actually, 2 medrashim later, it says Yud Beis number 12, so I'm skipping one. Yaakov, in response to what Shimon and Levi did, he said to them, "You've darkened me." So the sages say that what he was saying to them was that the barrel, which was full of water, it was clear, and you made it dark. You shook things up, and you brought up all the sediment from the bottom of the barrel. This is what I was quoting to you before. There was a Masera. There was a tradition that the Canaanites had. They know that they're going to fall by my hands, by the hands of the Jewish people. Hashem said it's not going to be until you become many, until you have 600,000. You need 600,000 men. Okay, so he said to them that it's not yet the time to be capturing the land of Israel until we have that spiritual power of so many people, right? Which is going to be in the future. When the Jewish people when they leave Egypt, they have that many men, they have that spiritual power of that many people serving Hashem in that relationship with God. So then we'll be able to capture the land of Israel. But now you're playing with fire. You're starting up with something, it's not yet the time. Okay? But they responded, interestingly, Amar Bihuda Bar Simon, so they responded and said, no, the barrel, the sediment was all shaken up. Everything was shaken up. We didn't have, if they could come in and start up with us and take one of the daughter of Yaakov Avinu, of Jacob, and violate her, so that means that they don't have the proper respect for the Jewish people. We stood up for that honor, and we settled down the sediment, and we caused it to be clear so that they won't start up with us. That was, interestingly, their response. But you see over here an amazing thing, and I'm sure I've said this in years past, but I saw once, I heard somebody, I don't know if I heard someone speak about this or I saw it written up, that the Jewish people in the year 1948, we had 600,000 Jews in this country, so it was the time. In 1967, there was double that amount. There was over 600,000 men, so it was mamish. It was literally like it was in the times of the Jewish people coming into the land of Israel. And now, today, we have 6 million Jews here, so we have 10 times that's 600,000. So, bottom line, the take home here is we need to have a certain amount of people serving God, connected to God, in order to have the merit to be here. We need to have the zchus, the merit of Yaakov, of Jacob, that connection to God that he had. We need to continue that connection. Then we can be batuach, we can be certain. And then the first point that we mentioned, which is the last one I'll mention now, is that we need to stand up for our brothers and our sisters. And when we do, and both literal brothers and sisters and figurative brothers and sisters, and when we do, we forge a relationship that's unbreakable. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.